And we're out to the world.
Wow.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Citizens Weed Advisory Board for Monday, October 20th at 4:05 p.m. We have staff, but we have no other board members, unfortunately. So I guess we will just have to continue the approval of the minutes because we have no one to vote on them. And I'd like to go ahead and move to updates from staff, please. Julie Cole, Weed Manager.
On.
Oops, maybe turn yourself off.
I don't hear myself. Okay. Here's my annual
Julie, may I
Screen
just
share?
interrupt? Maybe we could introduce I didn't have it on the agenda, but maybe we could introduce Josh before you get, or part of your highlights. Introduce Josh. I don't know if you want to do that first.
Well, I have a new assistant manager
Sorry to
for the
interrupt.
vegetation department, and he's sitting over in the corner. This is Josh Hansen. He joined the vegetation department in April of 2025.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, how do I maximize that? Why is it?
Maybe on Zoom with the view. But maybe Julie's view to do full. I don't know.
Technical difficulties. I have no idea.
Well,
It looks pretty good.
we can see it enough, I think. You could maybe just talk us through it.
Okay, so each year I like to, at the end of the year, put up a map. This is, obviously the entire county, and generally speaking, when we are out, doing vegetation management, we're dropping lines on each one of the county roads and doing an assessment of a visual assessment of what we see on the roads. For example, we drive the road and we say, okay, 15% of this road might be infested with musk thistle and 5% of it might be infested with Russian appleweed or something like that. If it's a very large infestation, we will actually drop a polygon so we can show you the size of it, or do something of that nature. Usually on the west end, most of what we encounter out there is Russian knapweed, tamarisk, and unfortunately Russian thistle and kochia. On the east end, the species are a lot more varied and a lot more species of themselves. So that's why the map generally kind of seems to be a little heavy on the east end, because there's just more variety of noxious weeds on the east end. We manage all the county areas, all the county roads, including the Parks and Recreation, Parks and Open Space Trails, Town of Telluride, the Telluride Airport, RSI areas. We got a contract with United Gravel this year, which was brand new. And we also have a US Forest Service contract this year. We did Town of Mountain Village again, the Lone Cone Library, Matterhorn Mill, SMPA Solar Array, Telluride Gravel, and the Town of Ophir. And all of those were contracts we had for last year as well. We did get grant money from a grant called America the Beautiful. That grant money covered approximately 2 weeks of the Conservation Corps' time. And they just finished up last week doing what they did. They managed to cut and do some herbicide applications to approximately 3 linear miles of tamarisk in Dry Creek Basin. And they had approximately 2 weeks, I said, of crew work. The crew was an 8-person team. The second week they had probably about 5 people for a while. But they did get about 3 miles done. So here is what I did. So when, before the Conservation Corps was gonna come out, I took 3 different pictures to show the before and after photos. The first point was roughly 3 miles from the intersection of 141 and T28. And then I moved to the south and took 2 other pictures. As I said, the Conservation Corps only did about 3 linear miles. So I think they might have managed just to get to point 1. And we are going to go out in the next week and take the after picture. But that ditch that you're seeing in the pictures is roughly, I would say, 8-9 linear miles, starting from 141 going south. Here's the second picture and then the third one. Like I said, they probably got just photo point 1. So 2 and 3, I won't have an after picture for. Just some pictures of what the Conservation Corps is doing. In the background there, you can kind of see where they cut down some of the tamarisks, and they would cut it down, use an herbicide on the stump, and then they would leave the cut tree just on the ground there. They tried to pile them up against the side of the cliffs there to help with erosion control. But they just leave the tree there after they've cut it down and applied herbicides. Take pictures of the core. They are literally head deep in tamarisk right there that they're managing, they're cutting down. My crew was able to go out there for about 4 or 5 days and try to help as much as we could. We tried to help do herbicide applications. We tried to help with everything. I think we kind of interfered with their process a little bit, but we were out there trying to help. More pictures. Every year I'm asked to give a update on Diamond Ridge, which about 3 or 4 years ago, I was asked to manage that property above the airport for invasive musk thistle. Here is a picture, just so you can see. The top one here is 2022, and you can see a little musk thistle in the foreground, but everything that you can see in the background that kind of looks purple is also musk thistle. It was pretty dense. And here is the angle is different. It is the same. It is the same piece of land. It's just taken from the open field towards Last Dollar Road, and I took it in the opposite direction in the picture above. But that is what the exact same parcel looks like now. So you can't really see any of the musk thistle at all anymore. Here is the beginning of what we did. So For the U.S. Forest Service, we spent about 10 to 12 days just up in Beaver Park. Many acres infested with musk thistle as far as the eye could see. It was only one of several areas we did, but it was certainly the worst area that we tackled. Here is a photo point that I made for the Forest Service. I took one on one side of the road and one on the other side of the road. Again, you can see that musk thistle in the foreground, but all the way to the hill on the right-hand side in the background is just solid musk thistle. And then this is the other side of the road, same thing here. The first 20 feet from the roadway, you can see there isn't any musk thistle right there. That was because several weeks before that, the truck had gone through and they had just sprayed the first 20 feet of the road. But if you look to the right-hand side of that picture, you can see it pick up in the open field after that. That has since been sprayed, and we will go out again in another week and get the after pictures.
So you were getting out of the truck and spraying.
The truck, the booms on the truck go roughly 20 feet away from the truck. That's as far as they can go. After that, we have to bring up the other equipment. We have to bring up side-by-sides or ATVs or something to get back into those fields a little further.
It's a lot of land to cover.
In 2022, this is a Parks and Open Space update. We did all of the county trails this year, and I'm sure that you will be thrilled to know the next slide, what happened with the Parks and Open Space. But we did unfortunately find Dalmatian toadflax this year again in 2025. We found it in 2022, not in 2023, not in 2024, but we found it again in 2025. Short update, we're still doing the county gravel pits, still making progress on those. Norwood pit generally has a lot of hoary crest to deal with. We normally do Zadra. We weren't able to get into Zadra this year for some reason. Locked gate, and we could not get the code to that. Klondike is out on the west end. That has no A, B, or C list weeds. It's really just full of sweet clover, but we still manage that one. Pathfinder is up near Ophir, and that one has seen a dramatic decrease in weeds to the point where they're only in isolated pockets on that pit. Very happy to report that. That pit usually has musk thistle, Canada thistle, and oxeye daisy. And then U.S. Forest Service has a new pit in conjunction with Road and Bridge up near Beaver Park. And we were managing that area before any road and bridge work started this year, and we'll continue to manage it in the next 4 years. Fairgrounds, we manage every year, several times a year. It is one of the few spots in San Miguel County where we manage kochia. Because of the use of the fairgrounds. We, several years ago, started doing a pre-emergent in the spring and in the fall, and it's shown a lot of success. So nothing necessarily new with that one. We're just continuing it and continuing to keep it up to snuff for uses of the fairground. Several years ago, actually, excuse me, last year in 2024, before the America the Beautiful grant started, we released the tamarisk beetle in Disappointment Valley along Disappointment Creek. Originally, we had planned to use America the Beautiful money there, but since those are private land holdings, we were unable to contact the landowners to be able to do that out there. I have been monitoring the beetle releases out there since 2024. I haven't seen any success with that. I'm not sure necessarily why that is. Some of the reasons here that when you look at the website, it says that, you know, sometimes the initial defoliation, tamarisk can refoliate and recover during the same growing seasons. And there's boom and bust cycles with high beetle populations can cause widespread defoliation of large areas. The following year, beetle numbers crash due to a lack of food, and the area is temporarily abandoned before repollination occurs. I don't think I've seen more than a 10% defoliation in that area, so it hasn't been highly successful.
A disappointment.
Disappointing.
You know, we put the biological controls out there because Disappointment Creek is just completely choked with tamarisk. It's a dry area, obviously, and you know, it's something we try just to see if we can get any success out there. Maybe in 2020, we also tried the Russian napweed gall wasp out there and didn't have any success with that one either. So here is a short synopsis of what happens in 2025, but this year the crew treated about 419 acres. And when I say treated, that means that of all of the acres that we covered, that we only needed to treat 419. Sounds daunting, but when you consider that the crew probably traversed more than 53,000 acres, only 419 of them actually needed to be treated. A lot of that on US Forest Service lands, since we got the contract for the first time this year. Education efforts still continue. We are working on a YouTube video, hopefully to come out next spring. We still do the Weed of the Month posters, and we did a noxious weed survey throughout San Miguel County. So those are all the same, and I will go over the results of the survey in a few minutes here. We had planned on a weed pull day with the Telluride Academy and the US Forest Service at an area off of Ilium Road called the Sheep Corrals. But Telluride Academy wasn't able to participate, and that kind of fell through the cracks. But we were able to go to that area with the US Forest Service contract and take care of the weeds out there anyway. So here's the noxious weed survey results. This was probably out on the internet for about 4 or 5 months, I believe. We only had a total of about 42 responses for the entire time it was out here. One of our questions was, do you know that the county offers a cost share program where residents can purchase herbicides at a 50% discount? As you can see, 52% of respondents said no and 47% said yes, so roughly 50-50. If county vegetation control and management were able to assist private landowners or another contractor could with herbicide control, would you utilize these services on your property? We tried to just make this yes or no, and would they use herbicides if they were organic? So this graph is a little bit more dense. Approximately 47% said they would use herbicides, and about 33% said they would use herbicides, but they would want them to be organic herbicides. We asked the question, are you aware if you have noxious weeds on your property? 81% of them said yes. And we asked if you had noxious weeds on your property, do you manage them? And 81% said yes. This doesn't tell you whether they manage them organically, mechanically, or with herbicides. But we did get an 81% response out of the 42 respondents. If you have noxious weeds, is cost a major factor and challenge for you in trying to manage them on your property? Out of the respondents, 64% said no. We asked the question, I am aware that taking action to remove noxious weeds is a state mandate, even if you think the weeds look beautiful. And we got an 83% response that said yes, we're aware. Next question, I think San Miguel County should take action and enforcement for those landowners who don't effectively control the noxious weeds on their property. So this is a question that we have struggled with for many years, about whether or not we enforce on private property owners who are not managing weeds. Something we've circled back to many, many times. 63% of the respondents said that San Miguel County should take enforcement action. Again, this is something we've talked about for a long time, and right now with staffing and other concerns, we haven't been able to do this enforcement right now. Next question, if my neighbor has noxious weeds, I think they manage them on their property effectively. We had an agree, a disagree, and I am unsure what noxious weeds my neighbor might have. 52% of the respondents said that their neighbor does not manage noxious weeds appropriately. 19% agreed, and 28% said they were unsure what their neighbor had on their property. Another question was, we put the question in whether or not CDOT manages the state highways 141, 145, and 62 effectively. It may be unknown, but as the county weed manager and the county department for vegetation control, we do not manage the state highways. Those are under CDOT's jurisdiction. In this case, 48% of the respondents in this question said they were unsure which noxious weeds are present on the highways. There are plenty of them. I just want to put that out there. Highway 62 is a mess. And Highway 145 is a mess, and Highway 141 is a mess as well, so. Next question is, I think San Miguel County Vegetation Control and Management is doing an effective job at managing noxious weeds on county roads, which are part of the department's responsibility. 42% of the respondents said they were unsure again what noxious weeds were on the county roads. 32 agree and 25% disagreed. Again, 141, 145, and 62 are not within the county's responsibility. And the next question was, I believe the BLM is doing an effective job at managing noxious weeds on federal properties. And we had 40 responses in this case, but 45% of those said they disagree. 40% said they were unsure. And last question, I believe the U.S. Forest Service is doing an effective job managing noxious weeds on federal properties. I do want to say that this is the first year that San Miguel County Vegetation Control and Management has had a contract with the U.S. Forest Service to manage their properties. So hopefully we will see a better response with the weeds on U.S. Forest Service. But in this case, of the 40 respondents, 40% said they were unsure if noxious weeds were present on U.S. Forest Service lands, while 37% said they disagreed that the U.S. Forest Service was managing noxious weeds appropriately. So, okay. Yeah, let me start that one, I guess. Okay. So here is the other document that I mentioned earlier. I put this together at the end of the year. This shows on the left-hand side, it shows the entity that I'm managing, whether it's parks and open space, whether it's gravel pits, whether it's on any of the other MOUs that we have. And then the next column over is the acres covered by vegetation management. Again, that's just acres that we go across, that we're traveling across, not necessarily acres that we are managing for noxious weeds. Next column over is acres treated. And then the final column is an estimated total of the number of acres managed or owned by the specific entity. I get this number taken from application records and GIS data when I'm dropping polygons on the map. So for parks and open space, I got about 78 acres that we cover for the department. In 2024, we actually treated 37 acres, and this year we treated 13. So remarkable improvements.
Nice.
Telluride gravel is pretty much the same. We only treat about 4 of the 13 acres on that one. The road and bridge pits now, we added Beaver Park again, in to the road and bridge pits. So that number is 247 for this year, which is probably an increase from 2024, but we did add an extra pit to that one. I estimated around 50,000 acres of US Forest Service property that would actually travel over. And despite Beaver Park being an absolute mess, we actually treated none of it. And then none of these other fields have changed from 2024. But I just want to highlight that, 419 acres of weed management is a result of the increase in contracts for the US Forest Service, not a tremendous increase in the weeds that we're seeing in San Miguel County. So that's all I have for my presentation today.
So it seems like overall, noxious weeds are down in the county.
Like I said, the 419 is an increase from 2024, but we did pick up the US Forest Service contract, so that number was expected to go up.
Well, it's nice, excuse me, it was nice that you had a full staff. It looks like you covered a lot of acreage. I'm curious, you had the contracts, like with the towns and, airport and stuff. Did you fulfill the full amount of or did you do more than one spraying with all the contracts? Or did you fulfill the full amount of the contracts, or did you just hit each contract with one round, or how did that all?
So all of the MOU contracts stipulate a not to exceed amount.
Yes,
Whatever that amount is. That doesn't mean that we're gonna go out there and do $3,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 worth of work. We always go out. I spend probably 2 days at Telluride Airport most years, spend 2 or 3 days at Mountain Village. And we just manage what's there. So if for the year we only needed to, do $1,000 of worth of work, that's all we do.
and so you only hit them once?
No, multiple days.
But only not like at the beginning of the season, the end of the season, just one time.
No, like I said, we spend 2 days, 3 days out at the Telluride Airport.
But I mean, like, do you do it in the spring and then come back in the fall because you see more, or do you just go out one time in the season?
Multiple times. And then, no, it's not necessarily in the spring and in the fall. It's when we get to the area, basically. Yeah.
And then I was curious, the Forest Service, you have, I think it's a maximum of $50,000 for multiple years. Will you go again next year?
The contract is a 5-year contract, for $50,000 total.
Yeah, so that's what, so you did like 10, it looks like.
Roughly $10,000 each year for 5 years. What I suspect will happen is we did $10,000 worth of work this year. Actually, we did more than that because the county has to contribute a certain percentage to the contract, and the Forest Service covers it, the rest. So we did about $10,000 worth of work for the Forest Service that they will have to pay. And that's not including the county's share. But I hope that will go down a little bit next year. I mean, I hope we will have to spray less next year. But yeah, it's a 5-year contract.
Right, so that's what you're anticipating to keep going for the next 4 years. And then I was curious how the cost share went this year. You had more money in your bucket for that, and I was curious.
My total I did get some increase in the cost share, but not a lot. It just didn't really go up. Yeah, $704.
Oh, that's all?
Yep.
Out of the 5,000?
Yep.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit, Nancy. The Colorado Department of Agriculture through the Noxious Weed Fund has kind of changed a little bit. Jim Fitzmaurice had asked me to apply in 2026 for the Noxious Weed Fund for San Miguel County, and I'll still do that. That application series probably won't open for the next month. So I probably won't even be able to apply till November, and I probably won't know until, I'd say February or March if we get the money. The idea being that if we do get money from the state of Colorado, that would be money that we would offer in connection. We would offer the cost share, we'd offer the resident 50% off the cost of herbicides, which is what the cost share covers, only the herbicides. It doesn't cover an applicator's time, it doesn't cover their fee, just the cost of herbicides. So if we were to get money from the Colorado Department of Agriculture, that would be money in a pot that we could use to help defray the cost for some private landowners if they choose to use the county to manage noxious weeds on their property. But that's all dependent on whether or not we get funds. So for example, we worked on the private property contract. If next year we got, $7,000, and I had homeowners throughout the county who wanted the county to come and do weed management on their property, we could say, this is how much money we have. We can offer each resident X number of dollars towards the bill to help defray the cost. And so that's the goal, and that was what Jim Fitzmaurice asked me to do for 2026, is to see if I can get those funds. It is dependent on grant money though.
But why do you think that the homeowners haven't even, do they just not know about it? Because I mean, I think last year you hit 2,000 and some dollars.
Yeah, I do, I offered that also through Wes Rushings. He is an applicator here, and if he has private property owners who he's doing work for, he can get the chemicals here from the county,
Mhm.
and we'll give to him at 50% off too. He's aware of that. So as far as the cost share is concerned, I'm not sure. I mean, it sounded like there was, but there's 49 respondents, right? in the
Right,
Survey, and out of those 50% knew about the cost share, so. It is only herbicides though.
right.
I mean, that's, something we could talk about if we want to use the cost share to offer, like, defray cost for the applicator as well. Right now, we're not doing that though.
Well, that might be a nice quick segue into our next, thank you, Julie, if I may say that, for that report. And I'm glad you had staff in it. I'm really pleased you got so many acres done, a lot of walking, I'm sure, and driving. But the next thing that we have was a discussion of the private landowners waiver. So I don't know, if this is just staff here and everything, but it certainly is an option that you could potentially change up your cost share program possibly and offer the labor in addition to the chemicals to help, maybe.
Yeah, so that's something that we could potentially do. I do want to, reiterate that if the county decides to use part of the cost share funds to defray the cost of, commercial applicators, that we are in direct competition with West Rushings. So we might want to think about that. I had originally said, that Wes and I talk a lot, and I allow him to see if he can do most of these applications himself, if he's got staff before the county steps in to help out. And that was the reason for the waiver, so that if West Rushings can't do it, that the county could step in and help these individuals out with applications. So
Maybe you could still reimburse the landowner, he would still get paid, and then
and if we get, like I said, if we get grant money funds, or, we can talk about that in future weed board meetings, but we could also use that money to defray the cost for the landowner if West Rushings does the application, and just reimburse him as well, so we're not competing with him. There's options here.
I guess my question is, I mean, I think there's a lot of weeds and I don't know why we're it sounds like there's plenty of work for both the county and Wes. So and you've talked with him, do you really feel like there's an issue with competition with him? I mean, why can't we all hit the weeds?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that in most cases, Wes struggles with the same thing that the county does, is that he may not have the individuals to help him do, maybe he gets in a normal year when he doesn't have staff to help him, maybe he can do 100 contracts in a year or something like that. And maybe if he doesn't have, if he had more staff, he could do 150, so he just can't do as many contracts if he doesn't have staff. We both struggle with the same thing. So going forward, whether we decide that we're going to use some of the cost share funds to defray the cost of an applicator, or if we decide that, we get grant money and we're going to use those funds to defray the cost of an applicator, just need to continue to work with Wes and so that we can both coexist. And then,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I just feel like there's probably plenty of work if people.
There are other grants that do something similar, like Eco Action has green grants if you want to replace the windows on your house. It's not like it's taking business from the window installers because they charge you what they charge, and then you go back to Eco Action and say, this
Yeah.
is what I paid. Can I get reimbursed for some of it? So I could see there being a avenue to do it.
Yeah, I would love to see. I know it's a daunting task with the big county and it's hard to find people to help. But keep working at it, and possibly being able to help some private landowners might be a nice avenue. That I think that's been a area that's been lacking.
so I guess that would be, for the next WE board meeting, and hopefully we have some more of our members here. Do we use some of that 5,000 that the Board of County Commissioners put into the cost share fund to defray the cost of application on private property? That's a question.
Do we need to ask the board?
Yeah.
I would think to see how they feel about that.
Mhm.
So, okay. Well, and then, anybody else have any comments? Do we want to talk more on that topic? We already went through the survey results. And, we have no one else to discuss meeting dates with other than staff. So, if you guys have anything else, please speak your piece. No? Then I guess we could, Josh, were you going to stretch? Okay. Just stretching. Great, then I guess we will call this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, at 4:43.
At 4:43, thank you, Greg. Yep.